11 bodies. That's how many were checked in that night. 12 sets of eyes were open by morning. Here's something they don't put in the job training. Dead bodies move. They do. Gases shift. Muscles contract hours after death, sometimes days after. You learn this your first week. You learn to expect the arm that falls, the jaw that drops open. What you never learn to expect is when they move toward you. I've talked to 17 mortuary workers over the past 8 months. Night shift. Always night shift. And here's what none of them will say on record. Something lives in the spaces we store our dead, not with them, not inside them, between them. 2 stories tonight, both verified. Both from people who had nothing to gain by lying, and everything to lose by telling the truth. The first comes from Marcus, 23 years old, needed tuition money, thought working with corpses would be easier than working with customers. I keep telling myself I imagined it every night. Before I take my pills, I say, it wasn't real. Then I remember I still have the scar. What you're about to hear isn't comfortable. It isn't safe. And I'll tell you right now, if you work nights somewhere quiet, somewhere with long hallways and doors that lock from the outside, maybe skip this one. For everyone else, lights off works best for this. Trust me. Here's what Marcus saw in Cold Storage Unit 4. On the night 12 bodies became 11. Before we begin, I want to know where you're listening from tonight. Drop your location in the comments, city, country, or if you're feeling brave, tell me where you're sitting right now. Bedroom? Living room? Somewhere you probably shouldn't be listening to this? I read every comment, and trust me, some of the places you all listen from are stories in themselves. If you're new here, consider subscribing. Not for me, for the stories. The ones that don't make it onto other channels. The ones people send me because they know I won't laugh, won't dismiss them. Some of these people have been carrying what happened to them for years. They deserve to be heard. And you deserve to know what's really out there in the places we don't talk about. The first story comes from Marcus. 23 years old when this happened. Pre-med student working overnight intake at a county mortuary in Ohio. He reached out to me 7 months ago. Took 4 more months before he'd agree to share the full account. I don't tell people about this, not anymore. They look at you different after, like you're broken or lying. I'm not lying. Marcus asked me to change certain details, the facility name, his supervisor's identity, small things that could trace back. But the core of what happened, the thing in Cold Storage Unit 4, that's exactly as he described it, word for word. He made me promise not to soften it, so I won't. Marcus was 23 when this happened. Pre-med at Ohio State. Organic chemistry, anatomy labs, 30-hour study weeks. You know the type, running on caffeine and the desperate hope that it would all be worth it someday. He needed a job that wouldn't interfere with his class schedule, something quiet, something that paid decent and didn't require him to smile at customers. My roommate found the listing, night attendant at a mortuary, 11 to 7, 4 nights a week, $14 an hour. He sent it to me as a joke. I applied the same night. The facility was called Hartwell & Sons, county morgue and funeral services, serving 3 rural townships east of Columbus. Red brick building from the 1950s. Wheelchair ramp added sometime in the 90s. American flag out front that no one remembered to take down at night. The kind of place you drive past 100 times without ever really seeing. Marcus started in September. The job was exactly what he needed. The routine was simple. Check temperature logs every 90 minutes. Cold storage had to stay between 36 and 39 degrees, no exceptions. Walk the hallways twice per shift. Make sure the prep room was clean for the day staff. Log any calls from hospitals or police. Most nights, the phone didn't ring at all. I'd do my rounds, then sit in the break room and study. Anatomy textbook open, coffee going cold, dead bodies 50 feet away. Sounds morbid, right? But honestly, it was peaceful. The dead don't ask you questions. They don't need anything from you. They're just there. For 3 months, Marcus had no complaints. He learned which floorboards creaked, which lights flickered. He memorized the sounds the building made when the wind picked up, the rattle of the loading dock door, the whistle through the gap in the storage room window. He knew that place, every corner, every shadow. Or at least, he thought he did. Then came December 14th, a Thursday, his 47th shift. The night everything changed. It started small, so small that Marcus almost didn't register it at first. His 2 a.m. round, routine check, walk the east corridor, verify the loading dock, then cold storage, units 1 through 6, and back to the break room. He'd done it 100 times. Cold storage unit 4 was at the end of the row, older model. The drawer mechanism was heavier than the others, needed a firm push to latch properly. 6 drawers per unit. That night, 4 were occupied. Drawer 3 was open. Not much. An inch, maybe 2, just enough that the seal wasn't engaged, just enough to notice. Marcus stood there for a moment, clipboard in hand, trying to remember. I close every drawer, every single one. I check them twice. It's not even a conscious thing anymore. It's muscle memory. You learn to be thorough because if you're not, if a seal fails and the temperature fluctuates, bodies decompose faster than you'd think. He stepped inside. The cold hit him immediately, that sharp clinical bite that settles in your lungs. He crossed to drawer 3. Closed, secure. He checked the latch twice. Old building, he told himself. Vibrations from the heating system. Maybe I didn't push hard enough during the last round. He didn't let himself think about the fact that the heating system was in the west wing, 50 feet away, behind 2 closed fire doors. That was his first mistake, not the drawer. Convincing himself it was nothing. Looking back, Marcus says there were signs. Things he'd noticed in those first 3 months, but never questioned. Never let himself question. The way Linda, the day shift manager, always asked if his nights were quiet. Not how they were, if they were quiet, every single morning. The way the other night attendant, a guy named Roger, quit after 2 weeks without giving a reason, left his last paycheck uncollected. Marcus found out later that Roger wasn't the first. In the past 5 years, Hartwell & Sons had gone through 11 night attendants. He was number 12. And then there was the basement. His first week, the facility director, a man named Hartwell, 4th generation, had walked him through the building. Every room, every closet, every supply cabinet. Thorough. Except for one door at the end of the east corridor. He walked right past it, didn't even slow down. I asked what was down there and he just stopped, looked at me, and said, "Old records, nothing you need to worry about." Marcus had noticed that lock. You couldn't miss it. Industrial steel, 3 deadbolts, the kind of hardware you'd expect on a bank vault. Or a cage, the kind of lock designed to keep something in. He didn't ask questions. He didn't want to know. That was about to change. 4 nights passed, December 18th. Marcus had almost convinced himself the drawer was nothing. A latch that didn't catch. Old equipment. These things happen. He was doing his 2 a.m. round. East Corridor. Loading dock, cold storage, muscle memory by now. He walked past the prep room and stopped. Something was wrong. Dripping. The prep room should have been empty. No services scheduled until Thursday. No bodies being worked on. The morning staff had cleaned everything before they left. Marcus had watched them. He stood outside the door, listening. 12 drops, he counted. Then silence. I told myself it was a leak. Old pipes. The building was from the 50s. Stuff breaks down. That's what I told myself. But I'd never heard that sound before. Not once in 3 months. Marcus opened the door. The prep room was exactly as it should be. Embalming table, empty. Instruments cleaned, covered, stored. Fluorescent lights humming overhead. Everything sterile. Everything in place, except for the floor. The drain in the center of the room was wet, fresh wet. A small pool spreading outward, still glistening under the lights. Like something had just been washed down it. And leading away from the drain, toward the door to cold storage. Footprints, bare feet, adult-sized, the moisture still catching the light. Marcus followed them with his flashlight. 6 feet, 8, 10. They led directly to the cold storage door, then stopped. He opened the door, stepped inside, followed the trail with his beam. Drawer 3. The same drawer from 4 nights before. Inside drawer 3 was Margaret Chen, 63 years old. Pancreatic cancer, arrived that morning. Marcus pulled the drawer open, just enough to check. Her feet were dry, cold, the same temperature as the drawer itself. The footprints on the floor were still wet. They weren't hers. I mopped it up, the footprints. I got cleaning supplies from the closet, and I mopped every inch of that floor. And I didn't write it in the log. What was I supposed to write? December 21st, winter solstice, the longest night of the year. Marcus almost called in sick. He'd been telling himself it was stress, sleep deprivation. Finals had just ended. Maybe his mind was playing tricks. I sat in my car for 20 minutes before my shift, engine running, heat on, telling myself I was being ridiculous. But something felt wrong, like, you know when you're about to walk into a room and you just know someone's waiting on the other side? It felt like that. The whole building felt like that. He went in anyway. Bills don't pay themselves. Tuition doesn't fund itself. That's what he kept repeating. The first few hours were quiet, normal. He did his rounds at 11, at 12:30, nothing out of place. Drawer 3 stayed closed. By 3 a.m., Marcus had almost relaxed. He was at the front desk, filling out temperature logs, half watching a video on his phone. Then he heard it. Whistling. Someone was whistling, coming from the back of the building, from the direction of cold storage. Marcus sat frozen, pen still in his hand. The video on his phone kept playing, but he couldn't hear it anymore. The tune was old, familiar in the way things are familiar when you've heard them in old movies, old recordings. Something pre-war, something that belonged to a generation almost entirely gone. Margaret Chen was born in 1959. She would have been a child in the 60s. That song was older, way older. But her mother would have been the right age. Her mother who died in 1987. Marcus didn't want to check. Every instinct screamed at him to stay at that desk, to wait for morning, to let the day shift, handle whatever this was. But what if someone had broken in? What if there was a rational explanation? What if he was imagining the whole thing? He grabbed his flashlight. He walked toward the sound. The whistling stopped the moment his hand touched the cold storage door. Everything was exactly as it should be. All 6 drawers in Unit 4, closed. All occupied drawers accounted for. Except drawer 3 was cold, ice cold, colder than the others. He could feel it from 2 feet away. The temperature bleeding through the metal like a warning. Marcus reached out. His fingers touched the handle. Something touched back. From inside. 3 taps. Slow. Acknowledging. I could feel it. Through the metal. Not cold. The opposite. Where it touched. It was warm. Body temperature. Margaret Chen had been dead for 4 days. Marcus didn't open that drawer. He backed away slowly. He didn't turn around until he reached the corridor. He didn't check cold storage again for the rest of the night. After that night, Marcus started bringing a radio to work. Portable, battery-powered. He left it playing constantly. Music, talk shows, anything. Anything to fill the silence. It didn't help. The sounds came anyway. Through the music. Under it. Like they were waiting for me to stop paying attention. I started sleeping with the lights on at home. I'd never done that. Not since I was 6 years old. Margaret Chen's service was held on December 22nd. Cremation. Her ashes were collected by her son that afternoon. Drawer 3 was finally empty. For the first time in over a week, Marcus felt something loosen in his chest. Whatever had been happening, maybe it was connected to her. Maybe it was over. December 23rd, his shift started at 11 p.m. It was not over. The first few hours were quiet, almost peaceful. Marcus did his rounds without incident. Drawer 3 stayed empty. No footprints, no whistling, no tapping. At 3:15 a.m., he was sitting at the front desk, radio playing softly beside him. A Nat King Cole Christmas song. The Christmas song, chestnuts roasting. Then the radio turned off. Not the station, not static. The power. The display went dark. The speakers went dead. Marcus checked the outlet. Fine. Checked the batteries. Full. The radio simply stopped. And in the silence that followed, he heard breathing. Not from the cold storage room. Not from the hallway. From directly behind his chair. Marcus didn't turn around. He couldn't. Every muscle in his body locked. His hands gripped the edge of the desk so hard, his knuckles ached. I could feel it. The air was wrong, heavy, like someone was standing right there, close enough to touch. And I could smell it. Formaldehyde, decay, something sweet underneath, like rotting flowers. The smell of the prep room, coming from right behind me, and then a voice directly in his ear. You've been letting the cold out. It doesn't like the cold. Marcus ran. He didn't stop until he reached the parking lot. The cold December air hit him like a wall, but he didn't feel it. He couldn't feel anything except his heart trying to break through his ribs. He turned around. Every light in the mortuary was off. The front desk, the hallways, the prep room, all dark, except for one, the basement. The basement light was on, bleeding around the edges of that heavy industrial door, spilling through the small rectangular window at the top. And in that window, there was a silhouette. It was waving at him. I got in my car. I drove home. I didn't look back, but I could feel it watching. The whole drive home. I still feel it sometimes when I'm alone at night. Marcus didn't go back to work that night. He didn't quit either. He should have. Marcus didn't go back inside that night. He sat in his car, engine running, heat on full blast, watching the building until sunrise. The basement light stayed on for 47 minutes. He counted. Then at 4:23 a.m., it went dark, all at once, like someone had flipped a switch. He drove straight to Hartwell's house, the facility director, the man who'd told him the basement was just old records. It was 6:15 a.m. on Christmas Eve when Marcus knocked on his door. Hartwell answered in a bathrobe. 73 years old, fourth-generation funeral director, a man who'd spent his entire life around the dead. Marcus told him everything: the drawer, the footprints, the whistling, the tapping, the voice. He expected to be fired, called unstable. At minimum, a polite suggestion to seek professional help. He just listened, didn't interrupt, didn't look at me like I was crazy, just stood there in his kitchen, nodding, like I was telling him about a plumbing problem. And when I finished, he said 5 words that I'll never forget. So it's awake again. Awake again. Like this was something that had happened before. Something the Hartwell family had dealt with for generations. Something they'd been waiting to deal with again. I asked him what he meant. What was awake? What was in that basement? He didn't answer, not directly. Hartwell told Marcus to take a week off, paid, full wages. He'd handle the night shifts himself, said he'd done it before, back in '94, and again in 2007. Marcus asked about the basement, about the lock, about the waving figure in the window. Hartwell looked at him for a long moment. Then he said, "Don't look in mirrors after dark. Not for the next week. And don't think about it. What you saw, what you heard, push it out of your mind completely. The more you think about it, son, the more it thinks about you." He wouldn't explain what that meant, just kept saying, "The less you know, the safer you are." Like ignorance was some kind of protection. I should have pushed harder. I should have demanded answers. But honestly, I didn't want to know. Not really. Marcus went home to his parents' house for Christmas, Toledo, 3 hours north, away from Columbus, away from Hartwell and Sons, away from Drawer 3. For 5 days, he tried to forget. He ate his mother's cooking. He watched football with his dad. He helped his younger sister assemble a bookshelf on Christmas morning. Normal things, safe things. He avoided mirrors after dark, covered the one in his childhood bedroom with a t-shirt, told his mom he was going through something. She didn't push. He didn't let himself think about the basement, about the voice, about the smell of formaldehyde and rotting flowers. By December 28th, he'd almost convinced himself it was stress, finals, sleep deprivation, a gas leak, maybe, causing hallucinations. There had to be a logical explanation. There always was. On the 6th day, December 29th, he almost believed it. Then his sister knocked on his door. She was 16, half asleep. It was 2 a.m. She asked him one question. "Who were you talking to?" "I could hear you through the wall. It sounded like a conversation, but I couldn't hear the other person. Just you." And then silence, like you were waiting for responses. Marcus had been asleep since 11. He hadn't spoken to anyone. He'd been alone in that room for 3 hours. I asked her what I was saying. What words? She couldn't remember most of it, but she remembered one thing. She said I kept repeating a number, over and over. 3. The distance didn't matter. The mirrors didn't matter. Trying not to think about it, that didn't matter either. It was already thinking about him. 2 hours later, Marcus's phone rang. It was Hartwell. Something had happened at the mortuary. Something that couldn't wait for Marcus's week to end. Marcus sat on the edge of his childhood bed, staring at the wall. His sister had gone back to her room. The house was silent. But his mind wasn't. It was racing, connecting dots he wished would stay scattered. Hartwell's warning. The more you think about it, the more it thinks about you. The drawer that kept opening. The sounds that only started after he investigated. The presence that appeared after he listened for it. It wasn't the mortuary. It wasn't drawer 3. It wasn't Margaret Chen or anyone else in cold storage. It was attention. The thing in that basement, whatever had been locked behind that industrial door for God knows how long, it fed on being noticed, on being wondered about, on being feared. And Marcus had given it a feast. Every time I checked on a noise, I was feeding it. Every time I lay awake at 3 a.m. running through what happened, feeding it. Every nightmare, every flinch, every time I covered that mirror. It wasn't protection, it was a dinner bell. And now, it had followed him home. 200 miles away, 3 hours by car, a different city, a different house. None of it mattered. It was using his voice while he slept, speaking through him, having conversations he couldn't remember. His sister heard him talking, but she couldn't hear the replies, because the replies weren't out loud. They were inside his head. It was learning him, his patterns, his inflections, the specific way he pronounced certain words. Learning how to sound like him. Learning how to be him. His phone rang. 4:17 a.m. The screen showed a name he didn't want to see. Hartwell, work, Marcus answered. At first, it sounded like Hartwell. The same gravelly voice, the same careful cadence, the same way he said son at the end of sentences. But something was wrong. The pauses were off, too long, like whoever was talking had to think about what Hartwell would say next, like they were translating. And underneath his voice, I could hear something else, faint, almost subliminal, whistling. Marcus, son, I need you to come back tonight. Something's happened. I can't handle this alone anymore. Marcus gripped the phone tighter. Mr. Hartwell, he said, what's your daughter's name? Hartwell didn't have a daughter. He had 3 sons. Marcus had seen the photos on his desk. Come back, Marcus. Come back to drawer 3. We miss you. Marcus didn't sleep for the rest of the night. At 7 a.m., he called the real Hartwell. The old man answered on the first ring. He'd been trying to reach Marcus for hours. His phone, he said, hadn't been working since midnight. Something had happened at Hartwell & Sons. Something Hartwell wouldn't describe over the phone. He only said 3 words before hanging up. It got out. Marcus drove back to Columbus that night, 9 hours after that phone call, after speaking to the real Hartwell, after hearing those 3 words. It got out. I know what you're thinking. Why go back? Why not run the other direction and never stop? I've asked myself that every day since, and the only answer I have is, I had to know. I had to see what had been watching me. What had been using my voice, what had been living in that basement for God knows how long. I think that's what it wanted. I think curiosity was the point. He arrived at 11:47 p.m. The parking lot was empty. Hartwell's car wasn't there, no police, no emergency vehicles. Just the building, sitting in the dark like something waiting. All the lights were off, every single one, and I remember thinking, the emergency lighting should be on, the exit signs, the security lights in the hallway. There's no switch that turns all of those off at once. Something had to go through and kill each one, individually. Marcus crossed the parking lot. The front door was unlocked. Not just unlocked, open. A 2-inch gap, like an invitation, or a mouth. Inside, the dark was absolute. Not just absence of light, presence of dark. The kind that pushes back against a flashlight beam. Marcus swept the beam across the lobby. Front desk, empty. Chairs, empty. Everything exactly as it should be. Except for the floor. Footprints again, bare feet, but not wet this time. Dark, stained into the tile like scorch marks, like something burning had walked through. They led from the front desk, down the east corridor, toward the basement door. He passed cold storage unit 4. He didn't look. He couldn't. But in his peripheral vision, he saw that drawer 3 was open. All the way open. Empty. The corridor stretched ahead, longer than he remembered. The basement door at the end, visible now in his flashlight beam. It was open. For the first time in 4 generations of Hartwells. The basement door was open. The 3 industrial deadbolts lay on the floor, not unlocked, torn out. The metal twisted like something had ripped through from the inside. And from below, a smell. Not formaldehyde, not decay, something older, like a root cellar that hadn't been opened in a century. Earth and mold and something sweet underneath. Something that had been fermenting in the dark. Marcus descended. He told me later he felt like he was being lowered, like the stairs were pulling him down, whether he wanted to go or not. The basement wasn't what he expected. Not old records, not storage boxes and filing cabinets. A second cold storage facility, much older, stone walls sweating moisture, iron drawer units from another era, 1920s, maybe earlier. The kind of equipment that predated modern refrigeration. 8 drawers, all closed, all rusted shut, except for one, at the far end of the room. Drawer 7 was open, and inside was Hartwell. He was curled up in there, fetal position, eyes open, still alive. I could see him breathing. But he wasn't right. His skin was gray. His lips were moving, but no sound was coming out. And behind him, pressed against the back of the drawer, there was another door. A second door, hidden behind the drawer unit. Stone frame, metal surface, ancient, corroded, covered in markings Marcus didn't recognize. The door was open. Just a crack. Just enough. And from inside, Marcus heard a voice. His voice. His exact voice. Come see, Marcus. Come see what we look like now. We kept the cold out, just like you showed us. It's so warm in here. So warm. Marcus saw movement behind that door, in the black. Shapes that didn't move like bodies should move. Too many limbs, or not enough, he couldn't tell. But he saw eyes, dozens of them, all watching, all grateful. They were smiling, all of them, smiling with mouths that weren't theirs, with faces I almost recognized. And one of them looked exactly like me. Marcus ran. He ran and he didn't stop. He didn't help Hartwell. He didn't close the door. He didn't look back. He told me he could hear them following, up the stairs, down the corridor, through the lobby. But every time he turned, nothing was there. Just his own reflection in the dark windows. Smiling. He drove until sunrise. Didn't stop once. When he finally pulled over, he was in Pennsylvania. He never went back to Ohio. But that's not the end of Marcus's story. Because 3 months later, something happened that made everything worse. Marcus didn't open that door. He told me that's what saved him, that single moment of resistance, of refusing to see. He called 911 from his car, gave them the address, said there was a man trapped inside. Then he drove. They found Hartwell 3 hours later. Still in drawer 7, eyes open, alive. But he never spoke again. Hartwell spent 6 weeks in the hospital, unresponsive, catatonic. Doctors called it acute psychological trauma. Couldn't explain the frostbite on his hands. The basement wasn't that cold. He died in February, in his sleep. The nurse who found him said he was smiling. Hartwell and Sons closed permanently. The building was condemned. Something about structural instability in the basement, walls that had shifted in ways that didn't match the foundation. It's still standing. Last Marcus heard, no one's bought it. No one even visits anymore. But here's what Marcus told me, the part that keeps him awake. 3 months after he fled Ohio, he was living in Pittsburgh. New apartment, new job, trying to forget. March 15th. 3:33 a.m. I woke up standing in my bathroom. No memory of getting there. I was facing the mirror and I was smiling. But my reflection was crying. Marcus doesn't look in mirrors anymore, not after dark. Not ever, if he can help it. He's moved 4 times since Pittsburgh. He says it helps, for a while. But every few months he wakes up somewhere he didn't fall asleep. Closets. Basements. Once, the cold storage of a grocery store 3 miles from his apartment. It's still thinking about me, I can feel it, and I think it's getting closer to finished, whatever it's making me into. I asked Marcus what he thought it wanted. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "It doesn't want anything. It just replaces, one piece at a time. And one day, I'll wake up, and I won't be the one waking up anymore." Marcus moved to Seattle, then Denver, then somewhere he wouldn't tell me. Doesn't work nights anymore. Doesn't study medicine. Doesn't go near hospitals, morgues, or anywhere with industrial refrigeration. He covered every mirror in his apartment with black fabric. His roommates think it's an aesthetic choice. He lets them believe that. But sometimes he wakes at 3:15 a.m., standing somewhere he didn't fall asleep, hands ice cold, mouth tasting like formaldehyde. And in the silence of those moments, he swears he hears it. Whistling. That same old tune, coming from inside his own throat. He doesn't open his mouth to check. He knows better now. That was Marcus's story, but he's not alone. In the 8 months I spent researching mortuary workers, I heard variations of his experience more times than I expected. The drawers that open, the sounds that shouldn't be there, the feeling of being watched by people who can't watch anything anymore. But the second story I'm about to share, this one's different. Marcus encountered something that followed him home. Something that wanted to replace him. Maria encountered something that never left the body at all. Because some corpses aren't empty. some corpses are occupied, and some are waiting for the right person to get close enough. This is what happened at Riverside Memorial. November 2021. The night Maria opened a body bag that should have stayed closed. Maria was 26 when this happened, third-year medical student at Ohio State, same program Marcus had been in, though they never crossed paths. She'd taken a part-time job at Harrison County Mortuary, small facility, rural, 40 minutes outside of town, down a road that lost cell service after the second-mile marker. I called it proximity to anatomy. Sounds clinical because it was. I needed to stay sharp on tissue recognition, decomposition stages, bone structure, and I needed rent money. The mortuary paid $12 an hour and let me study between tasks. It was perfect. That's what I told myself. She was assigned to night shifts, 8 p.m. to 4 a.m., 3 nights a week, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. The work was simple: intake paperwork, temperature logs, occasionally prepping a body for the morning staff if a late transfer came in. Her supervisor was a man named Randall, 53 years old, worked at Harrison County for over 2 decades. Randall was hard to read, professional, but in a way that felt rehearsed, like he was always performing normal. He smiled at the right times, said the right things, but his eyes never matched. And he had rules, specific rules, the kind that felt less like policy and more like superstition. Maria's first night, Randall walked her through the facility. Standard orientation, fire exits, supply closets, emergency contacts. Then he stopped in front of the cold storage room. 7 drawers, stainless steel, standard mortuary issue. And he gave her the rules. 1. Never prop open the cold storage door, not even for a minute. The temperature fluctuation damages the preservation. 2. Never speak the names of the deceased out loud after 11 p.m. Respect for the families, he said. Sound carries in old buildings. 3. Never open drawer 7, ever, under any circumstances. I asked him why. He just looked at me, this long, flat stare, and he said, "It's not in use. That's it. It's not in use. Don't open it." I thought he was superstitious. A lot of old-timers in funeral homes are. They've got rituals, habits, things they do to make peace with spending their lives around death. So I followed the rules, kept the door closed, didn't say names after 11, and I didn't open drawer 7, mostly. The first strange thing happened 14 days into the job, October 29th. 2 days before Halloween. Maria was in the office, small room adjacent to cold storage, connected by a door with a narrow rectangular window, cataloging intake forms, routine work. Randall had stepped out for his break, drove into town for coffee, said he'd be back in 45 minutes. For the first time since starting the job, Maria was completely alone with the bodies. She was focused on paperwork, cause of death documentation, next of kin contacts, the mundane bureaucracy of mortality. Then, without knowing why, she looked up, through the window into cold storage. Just a habit, a glance, nothing intentional. Drawer 7 was glowing. Not bright, not like a light was on inside, more like bioluminescence, that faint green white you see in deep ocean footage. In things that live where sunlight doesn't reach. And it was pulsing, slowly, rhythmically, like breathing. Maria stood, crossed to the cold storage door. Her hand touched the handle. The glow vanished. The instant the door opened, it was gone. Just 7 steel drawers in a cold room. Nothing unusual, nothing phosphorescent. She stood in front of drawer 7, arm's length away, the handle right there. I could have opened it. No one would know. Randall was 20 minutes away. It would have taken 2 seconds. But his voice was in my head, that flat stare. Never open drawer 7, ever. So I didn't. She told herself it was a reflection, an optical illusion. Streetlight through a window, maybe. Hitting the metal at a strange angle. But reflections don't pulse. And there were no streetlights on that road. After that night, Maria started watching drawer 7, not opening it, just observing. She kept a notebook, times, durations, conditions, the same methodical approach she used for lab work. And she noticed patterns. The glow only appeared when I was alone, never when Randall was in the building, never when another staff member stopped by. Only when it was just me and the bodies. Like it knew who was watching, like it was watching back. She also noticed Randall's behavior around that drawer, or rather, the absence of behavior. He never looked at it, never glanced in its direction. In 20 years of working 3 feet from drawer 7, he had trained himself to unsee it completely. Maria watched him walk past it one night. His eyes jumped from drawer 6 to the wall. Drawer 7 didn't exist in his peripheral vision. 20 years of practiced blindness? That kind of discipline isn't born from superstition. It's born from experience. Maria should have asked why, should have demanded answers, should have listened to the instinct that made her skin prickle every time she passed that drawer. She should have quit. But she was curious, and she was a scientist, trained to investigate, to understand, to know. In places like Harrison County Mortuary, curiosity isn't a virtue. It's an invitation. And something in drawer 7 had been waiting a very long time for someone to accept. Week 3, November 10th. Randall called in sick for the first time in 5 years. The day manager mentioned it like it was unprecedented. Randall doesn't get sick, she said. Randall doesn't miss shifts. She asked if I'd be okay alone. I almost laughed. I'd done solo shifts before. 8 hours, handful of bodies, plenty of studying time. What could go wrong? I hate that question now. The first few hours were quiet. Maria finished her intake paperwork by 10, studied until 11, made coffee, checked temperature logs. Normal night, empty building, nothing unusual. At 11:30 p.m. she heard knocking. 3 slow knocks, coming from cold storage. I told myself it was pipes. Old building, temperature fluctuations, metal expands and contracts. It makes sounds. That's physics. 3 more knocks, louder, the same rhythm. Not random, not mechanical, deliberate. Maria went to check, the scientific mind, unable to leave a question unanswered. The cold storage room was exactly as she'd left it. 7 drawers, temperature holding steady, nothing out of place. But the sound was still there, clearer now, coming from inside the room. Coming from drawer 7. It sounded like someone knocking on a door from the wrong side. 3 knocks, then waiting, like they expected someone to answer. Like someone asking to be let out. Maria crossed the room, her hand found the drawer handle. Cold steel against her palm. She almost opened it. Every scientific instinct said, look, examine, understand. Then she noticed her reflection in the polished steel surface. Warped, stretched, the way metal bends images. But behind her reflection, there was another face, pale, indistinct, watching over her shoulder, where nothing should be. Maria ran. She didn't look back, didn't check if the face was real, didn't investigate. She spent the rest of the night in her car in the parking lot, doors locked, watching the building until sunrise. I told myself I'd imagined it. Stress, sleep deprivation, an overactive imagination in an empty building. I almost believed it. When Randall returned 2 days later, Maria asked him about drawer 7. She'd prepared what to say, kept it casual. "Hey, I heard some weird sounds the other night, coming from cold storage. Is there a ventilation issue with drawer 7 or—" I didn't even finish the sentence. His whole body changed, like I'd pulled a gun on him. Randall grabbed her arm. His grip was shaking. "Why?" he demanded. "Did you open it?" "No, but did you open it?" His voice cracked. 20 years of professional composure, gone in an instant. He was terrified, not annoyed, not dismissive. Terrified of me, of what I might have done. That scared me more than anything in that drawer. Maria told him no, she hadn't opened it, just heard sounds, wanted to understand. Randall's grip loosened. He let go, stepped back, stared at the floor like he was trying to remember how to breathe. Maria asked the obvious question. "What's inside, Randall? What's in drawer 7? "Nothing," he said. "Nothing is inside. That's the problem." He wouldn't explain, walked away, refused to discuss it for the rest of the shift. Maria watched him work that night. The way he moved through the mortuary, the way his eyes skipped over drawer 7 like it didn't exist. 20 years of practice, 20 years of not looking. She didn't understand what he meant. Nothing is inside, that's the problem. Not then. 2 nights later, she would. Because Randall would be gone, and drawer 7 would be open. November 15th. Maria arrived for her shift at 8 p.m. The sun was already down, November darkness coming earlier each day. Randall's car was in the lot, same spot he always parked. That should have been reassuring. But something felt wrong. The building looked, I don't know how to explain it, awake, like it was watching me walk toward it. I told myself I was being paranoid. Inside, the lights were on, normal. The heat was running, normal. But Randall wasn't at his desk. Wasn't in the break room, wasn't in the prep area. Maria called his name. The sound echoed. No answer. She checked every room. Nothing. His coffee mug was on the desk, still warm. His coat was on the hook. His keys were in the drawer. He was here. He had to be here. Then she turned toward cold storage. The door was wide open. Maria walked toward the cold storage room, each step heavier than the last. Through the doorway, she could see the drawers, 6 of them, closed as they should be. Drawer 7 was pulled all the way out, extended to its full length. Empty. I stood there for, I don't know, a minute, 5? I couldn't move. The drawer that should never be opened was open, and whatever had been inside, whatever nothing Randall was so afraid of, was gone. Maria approached the drawer, her flashlight trembling in her hand. The inside was normal, steel, cold, the same as any other drawer. Except for the scratches, deep gouges in the steel running lengthwise from the back of the drawer toward the opening. Not fingernails. The marks were too clean, too sharp. Something harder, something that wanted out very badly. And at the very back of the drawer, where shadow met steel, writing, carved into the metal, 3 words. I'm still here. Maria heard movement. Behind her, slow and shuffling. The sound of feet that had forgotten how to walk properly. She turned. The morgue was empty. The hallway beyond, empty. Nothing there. But the door to the basement stairwell was open. It hadn't been open before. Maria, come down. I need to show you something. His voice was wrong. Too flat. No breath between words. No pause. No rhythm. No life. Like someone reading from a script they didn't understand. Like someone who'd forgotten how speech was supposed to sound. It was his voice. Exactly his voice. But it wasn't him. I knew it wasn't him. And whatever was down there, it wanted me to come anyway. Maria didn't go to the basement. She ran. Out the front door, across the parking lot, into her car. Doors locked. Engine running. Phone already dialing. 911. She told them someone was in the building, that her supervisor was missing, that something was wrong. I couldn't explain the drawer, the scratches, the voice. How do you tell a dispatcher that a dead man's storage unit carved a message to you? I just said there was an intruder, that I heard someone in the basement. That was enough. Police arrived in 12 minutes. 2 units. They searched the entire building. Every room, every closet, every drawer. They found nothing. No intruder, no Randall, no explanation. His car was still in the lot, keys still in his desk drawer, coffee mug still warm when Maria had arrived. Cold now, but present. His reading glasses folded on a stack of intake forms. Everything suggested he'd been there minutes before she arrived. But Randall himself had vanished. The official report said he likely wandered off. Acute psychological episode, possible breakdown. They'd flag his credit cards, check hospitals, wait for him to surface. Harrison County Mortuary closed temporarily. Pending investigation. The bodies were transferred to a facility 2 counties over. No one asked about drawer 7. I didn't mention it. What would I say? That an empty drawer had been scratching messages into itself? That nothing had escaped? They would have sent me somewhere too. Maria went home. Took a leave from school. Tried to sleep. Couldn't. Tried to eat. Couldn't. Spent 3 days in her apartment, blinds drawn, jumping at every sound. But nothing happened. No knocking. No voices. No faces and reflections. She started to think maybe it was over. Maybe whatever had lived in drawer 7, that nothing Randall feared, had moved on. Maybe it had taken what it wanted. Maybe she was safe. Then, on the 4th night, 3:17 a.m., her phone lit up. A text message from Randall's phone. 1 word, found. Maria stared at that message for a long time, the screen burning in the darkness of her bedroom. Found. Found what? Found who? Found her? I kept reading it, over and over, like if I looked long enough, other words would appear, something that made sense. Nothing else came. She didn't respond, blocked the number, turned off her phone, told herself it was someone's sick idea of a joke, a coworker, maybe, who'd gotten Randall's phone somehow. But she didn't believe it, because she kept thinking about drawer 7, the way the glow only appeared when she was alone. The way the knocking started after she began paying attention. The way it always seemed to know when she was watching, like attention was a thread. And she'd been pulling it for weeks. Maria sat in the dark, and Randall's words finally made sense. Nothing is inside, that's the problem. Drawer 7 wasn't containing something. It wasn't a cage. It was an entrance, a doorway, a threshold between here and somewhere else. Somewhere that had been waiting, patiently, quietly, for someone to pay enough attention to crack it open. Randall had spent 20 years not looking, 20 years keeping that door shut through sheer force of disregard. And then Maria arrived, curious, scientific, watching. By watching, she'd opened it. By being curious, she'd invited something through, something that needed a body, something that had worn Randall like a coat and walked him into that basement, something that carved 3 words into steel to let her know it wasn't finished. I'm still here, and now it knew where she lived. There's someone in my apartment, right now, while I'm recording this. I can hear them in the kitchen, opening drawers, one at a time. They're counting. They're looking for number 7. Found you. What I'm about to play was recovered from Maria's phone 2 days after that recording cut out. A second file, time-stamped November 20th, 4:47 a.m. She was still alive when she made it. Barely. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. After what I heard in the kitchen, after that voice, I checked every room, every closet. Nothing there. But something had been there. A drawer was open. The 7th drawer in the kitchen island. I don't have a 7th drawer. I counted when I moved in. There are only 6. At 3 a.m., her motion sensor porch light turned on. Maria's apartment was on the 2nd floor, exterior stairwell. The light was positioned to catch anyone approaching her door. I heard it click on, and I knew before I looked, something was out there. Something had climbed those stairs without making a sound. I went to the peephole. Randall was standing on her porch, perfectly still, facing the door, close enough that she could see every detail through the fisheye lens. It was him, his face, his clothes, the same ones he'd been wearing when I last saw him, but everything was wrong. His posture was off. His spine curved at an angle that should have been painful. His arms hung too low, past his hips, almost to his knees, like the joints had been loosened. His head was tilted, 45 degrees, maybe more, the way an owl turns to watch prey. And his eyes were open, wide open, fixed on the peephole. He wasn't blinking. In 6 hours, he never blinked once. He stood there until sunrise, motionless, staring. Maria watched from the other side of the door, phone in hand, too terrified to look away. I thought if I stopped watching, he'd move, get closer, find a way in. So I watched, all night, and he watched back. At 6:15, the sun came up, and he just walked away. She watched him descend the stairs. He moved wrong, jerky, like someone operating a body they didn't quite understand. A marionette with tangled strings, figuring out which one controlled which limb. He reached the parking lot, walked into the tree line behind the complex, and disappeared. Maria called the police again, told them Randall had been outside her apartment, that he'd stood there all night, that something was wrong with him, seriously wrong. They took her statement, sent a unit to search the area, found nothing. But one of the officers recognized Randall's name. He called her back an hour later, asked if she was sitting down. Then he told her something that rewrote everything she thought she understood. Randall's body had been found 3 days earlier in the basement of Harrison County Mortuary. He'd been dead for over a week. Autopsy suggested cardiac arrest, though the medical examiner noted the body was unusually cold, unusually stiff, like it had been stored somewhere temperature-controlled. Randall was already dead when Maria started her shift on November 15th. Already dead when his voice called to her from the basement, already dead when drawer 7 was opened. The thing that stood on her porch for 6 hours, it was wearing him. It's learning. Every time I see it, it moves better, looks more right. I think it's almost finished practicing. Maria didn't wait for it to come back. She packed one bag, left everything else, drove out of the city at 4 a.m., headlights cutting through fog. She told no one where she was going, not her family, not her friends, not the police who'd already proven useless. 12 hours later, she checked into a motel in West Virginia under a fake name, paid cash, parked her car behind the building where it couldn't be seen from the road. 800 miles, no trail, no credit cards, no phone GPS. There's no way it can find me here. There's no way. For 2 days, nothing happened. Maria slept in shifts, kept the curtains drawn, watched the door. On the third night, at 3 a.m., that number, always that number, her phone buzzed. Unknown number, one message. Looking for you. She destroyed the phone, drove to the next town, bought a burner with cash, new number, no connection to her old life. Told herself it was a coincidence. Someone had gotten her number. A scammer, a stalker, something human, something explainable. It couldn't track me through a phone I'd already thrown away. That's not how anything works. 2 days later, new phone, new number, new motel 3 states away. A text, getting warmer. Maria kept moving, city to city, motel to motel. She stopped using phones entirely, stopped using her car, sold it, bought a bus ticket, paid cash for everything. It didn't matter. The messages found her anyway. Almost there. Found your bus. Found your room. It's not following me. It's already there. Everywhere I go, it's already waiting, like it knows where I'm going before I do. On the 12th night, Maria woke to knocking. 3 slow knocks. Pause. 3 slow knocks. The same pattern from drawer 7. The same rhythm that had started everything. She didn't answer, didn't move, didn't breathe. The knocking continued until sunrise, never stopping. Never speeding up, the same mechanical patience she'd heard in cold storage. Then, as gray light bled through the curtains, a voice. Through the door, Randall's voice. You looked at the drawer. You thought about what was inside. You gave it attention. Now we know where you are. Now we know your face. Now we know your drawer. Maria opened the door. No one was there, but on the ground, placed neatly on the welcome mat, a photograph of her childhood bedroom. Her closet door was open, and inside the closet, barely visible in the shadows. 7 drawers that had never been there before. The 7th one was pulled out, waiting. Maria sent me her story 8 months ago. The recordings, the photos, everything you've just heard. She's still out there, still moving. A different city every few days. Cash only, no patterns, no roots. The messages have slowed, weeks between them now sometimes, but they haven't stopped. Last week she sent me a photo, no text, no explanation, just an image she wanted someone else to see. A motel bathroom mirror, standard, unremarkable, the kind you've seen 1,000 times, except for the handprint on the inside of the glass, not on the surface, inside, pressed against the mirror from somewhere behind the reflection. And in the background, over her shoulder, where the bathroom door should have been, a shadow. Too tall, wrong proportions, limbs that bent in directions they shouldn't. Wearing Randall's face, smiling. Don't try to find me, Don't think about where I might be. Don't picture the room I'm in or the road I'm driving. Because if you think about it, really focus on it, I think it can follow that. I think attention is how it moves. You gave it a path to me by listening to this. I'm sorry. I needed someone to know. Just try to forget. As soon as this ends, try to forget. She asked me not to think about her, not to picture where she might be hiding. I told her I wouldn't, but I can't stop. Every night, I wonder which motel, which highway, which drawer she's running from now. And I think that might be the point. I think that's how it spreads. I think you're doing it right now. So, 2 stories, 2 people whose lives were destroyed by something they can't explain. Marcus, Maria, strangers who never met, different cities, different years, different mortuaries. But they discovered the same truth, that mortuaries are liminal places, thresholds, spaces where the living and dead share the same air, the same walls, the same silence. And in places like that, the barrier gets thin. Things slip through. Things that shouldn't exist on this side. Things that are hungry. Now, here's what I need you to understand. I told you these stories, every detail, the drawers, the basements, the voices that learned to sound human. I described them, and you listened. You imagined them, which means you've been paying attention. Do you remember what attention does? Do you remember what feeds on being noticed? Both Marcus and Maria gave me the same warning before I recorded this. They said, if you tell people about it, it might notice them too. Every person who listens becomes a thread, and it can follow threads. I did it anyway, because I needed you to know, to be warned, to understand what's out there in the places we store our dead. But now that you've listened, now that you've pictured drawer 7, the scratches on the inside, the shape on the porch that used to be Randall, can you feel it? That slight pressure at the edge of your vision, that weight in the corner of the room you haven't looked at since this started. That feeling like something is standing just outside your peripheral, waiting to see if you'll turn. Don't look. Whatever you do, don't look. Because it's learned something from Marcus and Maria, something important. It's learned that there are always more eyes, more minds, more attention to feed on, through mirrors, through screens, through the black glass of phones held in dark rooms at 2 a.m. It's been looking for an audience, and tonight, it found one. 7, your drawer 7, and you're already open. Sweet dreams. We'll be watching,